Welcome to the Bob Shyrock Show. I'm very pleased to have as my guest today Dennis Womack, who is the head baseball coach at the University of Virginia. A lot of people in this area might not think of the University of Virginia as being a school which produces a lot of fine baseball talent, but two players from this area were key performers on last year's UVA team, which was 38-14, one of the best teams in school history, one for Dennis Womack ACC Coach of the Year honors, and three more outstanding players from last year's senior crop in South Jersey will be playing there this year, including Mike Lindner, who is the son of Channel 5's own Mike Lindner. We're going to talk to Dennis Womack about why he's in the area and about his 1986 baseball team right after this. Okay. Dennis, welcome to South Jersey. Welcome to the show. Very nice to have you here. A hot stove leg time, of course, and there's a purpose for you being in the area. As a matter of fact, a dual purpose.
Yes, me and two of our other coaches are here for the clinic at Cherry Hill, and I have the privilege to be able to speak over there this afternoon and tonight. And also, South Jersey has been a fertile recruiting area for us, and we were here last night to do some recruiting, and I'm sure I will see some other prospects at the clinic.
How did you first tap this area, Dennis? You've been at UVA for 5 years now. What got you into this area?
About 4 years ago, Kevin Madden, who had played for Joe Barth, and I'm sure everyone in this area and probably all of Jersey and most of the eastern seaboard knows that Joe Barth is one of the outstanding Legion coaches in this area and has been for some time.
Brooklawn Legion.
Brooklawn Legion, and I had Kevin was at a prep school in Virginia, and I had heard about him, and he had shown some interest in the University of Virginia, and we were able to recruit him, and so he was our first recruit from South Jersey. He said, well, now you need to get to know Joe Barth Sr. So I went to see a tournament in Lynchburg, which was a regional tournament, and met Joe and talked to him a little bit, but from Kevin, from that point on, we've been able to recruit some really top-notch student athletes that have been real good people for us at Virginia from South Jersey.
Of course, Kevin is from Collingswood and a key performer on last year's team that I mentioned, Bill Narleski, also from Collingswood. That's where the tie begins.
Yeah, we've, like I say, it's been a really good area for us, and I would have to think that Kevin's career was a little different in that he hurt his arm and he did not really pitch for the first 2 years. But he liked Virginia and liked some of the things that we were doing, and he was very interested in being a graduate from Virginia. And from that point on, we've been able to recruit certain type of student athletes to Virginia. We've been very fortunate.
Narleski with some pretty good baseball bloodlines.
Yes, real good. I think if I understand correctly, that I think it was his uncle, played in the Cleveland organization. And of course, Billy is has been one of our top players, and we expect him to be to have a real good year for us this year.
Of course, the other one on last year's team was Michael Bazar, who played at Triton Regional High School, another outstanding player.
Oh yes, last year we brought into our program 3 young players from the South Jersey area. One, Mike Bazar, and Mike, we had kind of messed that up just a little bit. We should have recruited him the year before and just sort of got off the track a little bit, but we're real glad that he's with us now. And of course, Andy Kavulij is with us, and of course, Mike Lindner. So we've got 3 new ones, and we're trying to recruit a couple other young men for the UVA program this coming year from here.
Tell us about Division I college baseball, Dennis, because you play a big schedule. I mean, it's not like the schools around here that go out and play 25, 26 games and half of them get rained out and they don't reschedule them. You're busy all the time.
Just about. And I think this is the way it is in almost all the Division I programs now. We probably play, I think our schedule this year is like 52 games. The limit in the NCAA Division I is 60 in the spring. But we've got a fall schedule, which is actually an exhibition schedule. So we just about stay busy all year round. It's a year-round sport, and one that it used to be in college. Many times you'd have an athlete who might be able to play 2 different sports. But that's not that way anymore. I mean, if you play baseball, we've got something for you to do just about all the time. So Division I baseball, I think has grown. It's probably more popular than it's ever been before in almost all the areas. And you'll see there's more and more revenue being pumped into Division I baseball, into college baseball programs than ever before. I mean, all of us now are...
Why has that changed, Dennis?
I think a lot of it has to do with the College World Series and the TV exposure that it's gotten, for one thing. I really do think that's a big plus. And also there are some programs around the country that have developed to a point where they're able to handle their finances and able to support their programs through the revenues that they bring in. And I think that's kind of given to the athletic director, send them a little signal, say, look, there is some money there for baseball. It's an untapped potential, and let's do something with it instead of just saying, okay, we're going to put $150,000 in a program, we're not going to get anything back out of it. But also, it may also coincide that I think Major League Baseball is probably as popular as it's ever been before. So it probably goes hand in hand.
I think the layman thinks of the collegiate baseball player or the program as the poor sister of football and basketball, particularly at the larger Division I schools. But baseball scholarship athletes get the same amenities that their brethren in football and basketball do they not?
Sure. Our scholarships are the same. We do ours a little bit different because football and basketball are required primarily to give a full scholarship, and we give a few full scholarships, but a lot of ours we break up into different partials in order to bring in a few more numbers, because we need a few more numbers, and a lot of times we don't have as much revenue. But basically the same things. Our baseball players eat at the same training table that our football and basketball players do, and they get the same academic counseling that our football and basketball players do. So they're not treated any different. Now the public may look at them a little bit different because they don't have quite as much exposure, but as far as UVA and what we do for our athletes, there's not any difference.
And in terms of being baseball coach at UVA, of course UVA in recent years has been noted for its great basketball teams, Ralph Sampson, of course, the great Atlantic Coast Conference basketball, and football has been elevated in recent years to where you've played in a couple bowls the last couple of years, but you haven't felt at any point that baseball was taking a back seat to these sports?
I don't really look at it that way, and I guess because I'm also in the administration of the department, that the basketball programs and the football programs have actually enhanced our baseball program, and also enhanced the rest of the entire athletic department, all the other sports, because they've given us an exposure that we normally would not have gotten. And we may take a back seat to them from the standpoint of we may not have quite as much revenue. When we travel, for instance, we don't necessarily stay at the Ramada Inn. Now, football and basketball may do that, and they may have a little more meal money than we do, but we're going to have enough. And it gets a little bit better every year. And the only reason it does is because football and basketball has brought in the revenue, the monies, to allow our program, one, to exist and also to improve every year. So I feel a close kinship with our two major sports.
Your schedule is 52 regular season games this year plus tournament. That's a big schedule. You open February 26th at William & Mary. You're assuming it's not going to snow in Williamsburg in the late February. But what I'd like to know is, from this point forward, how intensive is your practice? I assume you're indoors. What happens from here on into your first game?
Well, from this point on, and we just had a meeting on Wednesday, we practice every day, and this is starting this coming Monday. We practice every day unless I give them a day off. And it's normally a 2.5 hour practice with 2 days a week lifting. We have a rigorous running program. So they're going to be busy, but we feel like in 5 weeks, we normally get to a point where the only thing we need to do then is to play against outside competition. And so it's, from this point on, it's just about baseball every day until the end of school and to the end of the tournament.
You are indoors, I assume.
Yes.
What limitations, Dennis, are there on practicing indoors to prepare for a baseball season?
Well, the limitations are probably involve, one, we have an indoor tartan surface, and our infielders love it because the ball bounces true, and it comes a little bit quicker to them. But we can do a lot of things indoors. We cannot scrimmage, and I think that's the biggest thing, because up to a certain point you really need to play, and you need to play in a game-type situation, and that's where we have a problem. And that's one of the problems that a lot of the so-called schools in a little colder area have when we go south to play the southern schools, is that even though we've had a lot of batting practice, we've taken a lot of ground balls, we've thrown the ball a lot, we've done all that kind of stuff, we're probably in some kind of shape. All of a sudden you get outside and the wind's blowing a little bit, and you're not used to catching pop-ups in the wind, and you're not used to doing a lot of things that you have to do as far as scrimmaging. That's when you run into some problems. We try to combat that, though, realistically with, even though we're indoors a lot, if it's not just absolutely frigid, we would go outside, and we've got a parking lot right beside our outdoor facility, which we use. We've got a football field there that if it thaws out and we can get on it, we will. Plus, we also got the AstroTurf at our football stadium. And with that, we try to get our players outside as much as possible. Plus, I don't turn the heat on in that indoor facility because I know we're going to play in some cold weather. I know that, and I want our players to get acclimated to it.
Based on your experience working your teams indoors, Dennis, when you go outside, who's ready first, the pitchers or the hitters?
Normally, probably the hitters a little bit. The hitters have probably swung the bat consistently a little bit more. And the pitchers now still because they're having to throw a ball across a 17-inch plate, they still, even though they're thrown indoors, they haven't thrown against any wind. You know, you don't have any, you don't have the wind variable there. And all of a sudden they get outdoors and they're throwing off a mound, which is a little bit different. Plus they're also throwing against the wind or with the wind or whatever. And I think the pitchers have the hardest adjustment. I really do.
And backing up, you have a fall schedule too, I assume,
Yes.
because most Division I schools do now.
We play an exhibition schedule. The NCAA allows you 60 in the spring, 20 in the fall, or a combination of just, you cannot have more than 80. And we played, I think, 20, 22 games in the fall. But our fall season is an exhibition type of season. Does not count, except it's a really good opportunity for us to evaluate our players and have an opportunity for everyone to play, get a chance to play, and not have the pressure of having to win or lose. We like to win, obviously, but at certain times this fall, it looked like we had 3 or 4 of our infielders were hurt, so we tried some new players and tried switching around, and we always didn't look like a real good club, but I think by the end of the fall that we had made some progress and also had a good idea about some flexibility with some of our players.
I've always been intrigued by the extent of the schedules that the California collegiate teams have and the Arizona teams, the Southwest teams, whereby some of them are playing 80, 90, 100 games. By comparison, your 52-game schedule is relatively small, but I've wondered in terms of academics, Dennis, is that a problem when you were playing 52 games plus tournament between the end of February and into the middle of June? Is that an academic problem ever?
It's an academic problem in that the players lose what I consider study time. A lot of people, we travel some, but if you look at the schedule in earnest, you would recognize that a lot of our ACC games are on the weekend, so we really don't miss any class then. We do miss some class during the week occasionally when we travel within the state, but we don't always miss. The class we normally miss might be our 11 or 12 o'clock class. We'll miss some, but we miss some study time. It's like we'll go off and play 2.5 hours away. You get through the game at 6 o'clock. By the time you get a bite to eat at 7 or so, by the time you get home it's 10. And unless you've taken your books on the bus with you, it's kind of hard to, all of a sudden you come home, it's 10 o'clock, you know, and you just, boy, you know, I've still got to study and whatever. So I think we lose study time, but it's an academic problem. And that's one of the reasons why, one of the important reasons why that our standards at UVA are tough academically. In that if our players are admitted, then we know they can do the work. Now all they've got to do is decide on their priorities, what's important. You know, you've got the academics, you've got baseball. Now if they want a social life, then they have to decide how much of a social life they want. And we want them to have some. But they have to decide, you know, what their priorities are and how they're going to line them up. But you're right, it's a problem. Yeah. We couldn't do it. I had one of my players say, well, Coach, why are we not playing 60 games? I said, well, to be honest with you, in our schedule, we have built in a few off days. And I feel like you need those off days because I know you're going to get tired mentally, emotionally, and you're going to need a day that you can say, look, just don't come to the baseball field, you know, go to the library. Yeah. And so it's a problem. It really is a problem.
Okay, Dennis, we're going to take a little 7th inning stretch. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Good. My guest is Dennis Womack, who is University of Virginia head baseball coach and is doing a yeoman job of recruiting the South Jersey area. We want to talk now about some of those players. We touched on a couple of them in the beginning of the show, Dennis. Of course, Narleski was one, but the other part of that double play combination, Narleski playing short and Keith Kowalski playing second. Keith, of course, has been on Channel 5 a number of times, his great play at Gloucester Catholic through the years. Tell us about how Keith is developing.
Killer came to us, and I use Killer because that's his name. You'd look at him, he's probably about 5'11", weighs about 150 pounds, but it's all muscle. Keith is, I think if you could go out and just say, I'm going to recruit a young man who you know will come into your program and work hard every day, it would be Killer. I told someone last week that Killer is one of the few players that I've ever had that I don't believe he's ever had a bad practice. And I can't remember if he's ever had a bad game. I don't mean that he's been the star of the game, but every day he does the things that he needs to do. And he has been a really good player for us, and he's improved every year. First year he came, his batting average was kind of low. The next year it improved a little bit, you know, and he's just gone up every year. But he's always been a good defensive player.
346 last year.
346
Not
last
bad
year.
for a second baseman.
And I think he set some records for us, and of course everything is hit to him, he catches, and because he is the things that he's done for us, he's our captain this year. Not a vocal captain, but he's a captain by performance and by work habits.
You recognized, obviously, these qualities in addition to the ability in Keith when you recruited him.
Well, one of the things, I think this is the person who is most responsible for the South Jersey players being in our program is Joe Barth Sr. He is the one who said, look, you know, you look at Keith, you know, he's not real big, but he can play. And I found out one very important aspect is that when Joe Barth talks, you listen. And when he says something, if he says a young man can play, you don't question it. You just say, okay, does he have the kind of grades we want at UVA? Is he the kind of person we want at UVA? And if he says yes, I'll recruit him. It's just that simple.
Of course, we all know that's a very successful program, the Brooklawn program, from the standpoint of all their championships through the years. But you and your recruiting throughout the East Coast, do you recognize that? Is that recognized as a particularly uniquely good program for some reason?
I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that what happens with the Brooklawn players, you don't play on the Brooklawn team unless you work. And a lot of those kids spend a lot of time. I mean, you go to their field, and their field actually, as compared to some of the other fields that I've seen, you know, it's not as nice. But these kids have a work ethic, and Joe expects that from them, and he gets it from them. So when they come to college, when they come to UVA, and we're talking about players that, one, already know how to play the game. I mean, they know how to play baseball, and they've been well disciplined, and they know what's expected out of them. And they've had the encouragement of their parents who have been very supportive of them, the Brooklawn, and it carries over to UVA. I mean, by far, some of the best parents that we have in support at the University of Virginia, which is probably 4.5, 5 hours away, are our parents from South Jersey.
Is there extensive summer schedule a bonus for you, Dennis? A kid playing a lot of games in the summer, then going to a Division I school which plays a big schedule. Is that a plus too?
It's a plus. It's anytime. Baseball is a game that you have to play over and over and over to get it right. And the more they play, obviously, the better they're going to get as long as they're doing the things right. And they really do a top-notch job over there. Not only do they have kids that can play, but they, like I said before, you know, their work habits are always good, and they're just well-disciplined players and people.
We talked about Becerra a little bit. Let's talk about Lindner and Kowalski, because they were certainly a couple of outstanding performers in South Jersey last year. Of course, Mike from Clayton, who played at Gloucester Catholic, and Kowalski, who was a great star at Bishop Eustace. You got yourself a pitcher, and you got yourself a versatile guy that can hit the ball a long way.
Mike Lindner is probably next to Narleski, or maybe if you rated them, maybe they're probably the two best athletes, pure natural athletes on our team. Mike, in it being 6'3", runs very well. Even though he throws with a little different arm angle, has a strong arm, and of course can, about the first week he was taking batting practice, when we were just kind of throwing the ball in there, and he was hitting the ball out of the ballpark, and our players' mouth just kind of, you know, said, boy, where'd this guy come from? Not only did the ball go a long ways, but also went real high. It's kind of funny, just kind of these moon shots.
Mickey Mantle shots.
Right. Plus he just got a lot of natural ability. Just, you know, you can play him just about anywhere, and I think one of the things we've got to do is find a place for him, and he's going to get a lot of at-bats. I suspect no matter where I played him, he would do a good job. We stuck him at third base. I'm not sure he had played much third base during his career, probably mostly first base, but we put him at third base during the fall, and he did well.
He's played some third and some short, but he's played almost everywhere.
Yeah, he can do just about anything you want him to do. Kowalski is a little different in that he is not your prototype. You look at him and you say, well, this kid doesn't throw that hard. And he doesn't really throw as hard as some pitchers that we've got or some pitchers that a lot of other people have, but he's got a very good mental and emotional makeup for a pitcher. I mean, he thinks he can win when he goes to the mound. Plus his arm angle, he's always throwing the ball across the plate. He throws it from a little different arm angle. And I can see him being a consistent college pitcher and being a winning pitcher this year and every year. because of the things that I think he does, his mental makeup, but also because he's got some physical ability.
Would it be rare if a freshman became a starting pitcher for you?
It's not necessarily rare. What you're hoping is that you have you've got a good enough club and you have so much depth that it'd be hard for him to break into the lineup. But that's not going to be the case this year. Andy's going to be one of our 4 starters. He's going to have to go to the mound, and I don't particularly want to put that much pressure on him, but I wish I didn't have to do it, but it looks like he's going to have to just take a share of the load.
When you recruit a pitching staff, do you do it sort of the same way a baseball manager does? I mean, do you go into practice on paper at least knowing that you've got 4 or 5 starters and you've got 2 or 3 middlemen and the rest of the guys are short relief? Is that the way you put it together?
That's the way I think has come about now in Division I baseball. Obviously, you'd like for your best pitcher to pitch, or your best 2 pitchers pitch on the weekends against the conference. But it's hard to do that and give them the proper amount of rest and the proper amount of conditioning in order to get them ready to do that. So what we try to do, just like what you said, we'll have like 4 starters, a couple relief pitchers, middle relief pitchers, and a couple late inning relief pitchers. And we need about 8 pitchers for sure in order to go through our schedule, because as you noticed on our schedule, we play almost every day. And it's just like the big leagues. You just have to have a starter and say, look, this is your time to start, and 3 or 4 days from now, you're going to start again. And this is your role. So we try to set them up in a role. Now, there's a little bit of a problem in that when you first start off, it may take a little while to make sure you get everybody in the right pigeonhole. But like Andy, in his situation, he's a starting pitcher for us. I mean, that's his role. He knows what his role is going to be, and no matter how he pitches, no matter if he gets off to a rocky start, he knows that he's going to get another start 4 days later, and on and on and on, and that's his responsibility.
I remember in the old days. I'm not sure what the old days are, except I come from them.
Well, I think I do too, but...
college pitchers would pitch every other day, maybe. Might pitch 7 one day and 9 2 days later. You don't do that anymore, do you?
Really don't do that very much. Last year, we only got in a situation where I felt like one of our starting pitchers had pitched 9 innings, and we were going to bring him back in relief only because he told us that he felt like he had 2 or 3 more innings left in him, and it was in the regional tournament and whatever. But no, we try to set our pitchers up so that they pitch on a certain schedule. They get on that schedule, they stay on that schedule best that we can keep them on that schedule. And I think it helps their arm, plus I think it'll help their performance.
Okay, talk about Mike Lindner a little bit more. You mentioned his versatility. Where do you project him playing? I know he DH'd for you some in the fall schedule, right?
DH'd. And, Mike's in a situation where he may end up, he could play first base right off the bat. We know that. One of the problems we've got is that we've got a senior infield primarily. Mike may be our first man behind our third baseman. He'll probably share some time at first base because I've got a left-handed hitting first base. I may try to keep both their bats in the lineup, but just play Mike on defense some. And we're also going to probably work him in the outfield some because we've got a lot of young outfielders. And we played him a couple times in the outfield, and he did well out there. I don't know for sure where I'm going to put him in what slot yet defensively, but I know that his bat needs to stay in the lineup as much as possible. And defensively, we're going to try to give him as much time. He's just one of those kind of players you just can't quite find a pigeonhole for him yet because he does a lot of things well, and because in certain areas that he probably fits a little bit better, we have a lot of experienced players back.
Are you an advocate of the DH, Dennis?
I like it. I really do. I think it gives a player who may only have one talent, which may be hitting, an opportunity to play. I really do. Even though it's, I know a lot of people disagree, which is fine, I like it in the big leagues. I think that you get to see some of the stars for a longer time. I wish they'd had it when Mickey Mantle played.
Yeah, Mickey Mantle might have hit 800 home runs if they'd had the DH then.
Well, it'll help. I think the fans would have liked it.
Okay. You have at least one ex-player who is now pitching in the major leagues, Rick Horton, who done some pretty good things for the Cardinals.
He has.
On your first team at UVA, right?
Ricky is a left-handed pitcher, and he pitched in the World Series this year, kind of a middle relief man, and I think he started for him a little bit during the year. He's a young man with not a tremendous amount of talent. He doesn't have the 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but he does throw 84, 85, and he's got good control. And probably he may have the best left-handed move, probably he and Carlton, in the big leagues, especially in the National League. I mean, he can get you. He was terrific when he was in college. Plus, another thing I may add is that Ricky also has an engineering degree. So he doesn't need to play baseball for his living.
Was he a dominant college pitcher, Dennis?
He was good, but no, he's not. He was not as good as the pitcher we had last year. Our best pitcher, I think, we've had at Virginia since I've been there, was a young man named Tim Burcham. No, he was not. I don't think he's as good as Tim.
Surprise you at all that he reached the bigs as quickly as he did?
And a little bit it did, but I can see being left-handed and his work habits, because he was always a hard worker, and the way that he throws a ball that kind of slings the ball. It doesn't just come right over the top. It kind of drops down just a little bit. And I can see where for 2 or 3 innings that would give anybody a lot of problem. But I felt like that he would work at least hard enough to get there, which I think he did. And then things have worked out for him. Plus, he's a real nice kid. I mean, he's one of those kind of kids you'd love to see succeed, and he has.
Dennis, unfortunately, we're out of time. I appreciate you stopping in to be on my show during your visit to South Jersey. Nice having you. Good luck. Another good season, and I hope you pick off a couple more from South Jersey. You've done quite well.
We're going to continue to do that.
Thanks, Dennis. Good.